new ideas, new intentions, new chances, new blessings.
All right, it's a new day, a new start. Thanks everybody for being here today. Laura and I are super excited for this webinar, and it just came up at the last minute, but I think it's so needed. But before we jump into all of that, Miss Laura, you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I can go ahead and do that. So I'm officially the Chief Wellness Officer at Culture Cre8ion. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, which is kind of how we got on this topic, Nikki and I, and I'll tell you more a little bit about that later. I'm also a licensed chemical dependency counselor, so I deal a lot with addictions, all types of addictions. And my favorite part is that I'm a certified clinical hypnotherapist, which I use in my practice as well. We're going to be using some of the skills here, so we're going to be talking about that today. There's some DBT, dialectical behavior therapy skills that I'm going to be using. So that's a little bit about me and my background.
Wow, girl, that's a lot. Lots of good experiences. So mine is pretty simple. Nikki Spears, I am an author. I am a motivational speaker. I am president of Culture Cre8ion, and I call myself the Chief Inspiration Officer. Laura and I go, our visions, our missions align pretty well together. My role is to mentally stimulate people to do something different, especially in this moment that we're in after COVID and all the other things that's happening in our world. People need a little bit of inspiration. So I title myself now Chief Inspiration Officer. And just a little background about Laura and I before we came together with Culture Cre8ion recently. Before that, Laura was a principal at the same school where I was principal. But Laura, when did you serve at Quail Valley?
I was there 2011 to 2012 until I was moved to a different school, which is Nikki.
And the funny thing is I came in 2013 as the assistant principal, and then later that year moved into the principal role. And so it's funny how now we got together, and that's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, our paths have been crazy and strange, but we're here together. And
we're here.
I just want to say, you know, Nikki has been a huge inspiration for me ever since I met her when she was an assistant principal, and we've just continued to build on that relationship. So I'm so glad we're here together.
I am too. It's definitely a God thing, don't you think?
Definitely.
Okay, so let's dive into what we're here for today and what everybody's logged in for, Laura. And I am recording this. So if you know, people did not get a chance to log in today because it's Saturday before Christmas, and we promised that we would send the recording out. So I'm going to share my screen with everybody, and let me know if you can see this okay, Miss Laura.
I can see it. Can you make, yeah, perfect. If you can make it perfect.
There we go. Okay, so let's give them a little bit of information
That too.
about what we do with Culture Cre8ion. Culture Cre8ion was founded in 2016 with Kermit and I. Kermit, I don't know if you want to come on and say hi, but Kermit's our DJ this morning with some awesome tunes. Did you want to say hello this morning, Mr. Kermit?
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Happy to just see what's about to happen about how we engage more with our really cool families.
So at Culture Cre8ion, guys, we focus on the wellness of individuals so that they can show up and be their best self in their workplaces, families, and their communities. And we do this through training, through coaching, mentoring, book studies, and keynotes, and so much more. We are expanding our services, like we have Laura, who's now over she's the Chief Wellness Officer, so dealing with a lot of mental health. Ned, I think, is on, and he deals with financial wellness. So overall, the overall wellness of individuals, because we know that the individuals are what makes up our culture, right? And so if we can get healthy individuals into our workplaces, into our families, and into our communities, guess what? We have an awesome culture. Guys, before we get started, you do have some tools to use today. And we have a chat. So Kermit, I'm going to ask you to check the chat for questions that people may have, or even comments. There is an option for you to raise your hand. So you can do that as well. Yeah, Kermit just used his raise his hand button. The good news about today, guys, is that there is no camera. So you guys, you can lie in bed, drink your coffee. You don't have to get up and do your makeup and your hair and all that stuff. Just relax and listen in. But it's very interactive, so you can use the chat. So Laura, are you ready?
Ready. Let's go. Excited. So today's webinar is titled Dealing with Difficult Family Members During the Holidays. And just a little background on this, Nikki and I met, we're working on a few projects together, so you'll be seeing us together quite often. But one of the things we were talking about was just the holidays and a lot of the things that can happen within our mental state that cause us to gain anxiety or depression. So as we were talking about this, and we were talking about, you know, these upcoming events where we get together with family members that we may have not seen for some time, we just thought it'd be great for us to join forces and come up with a webinar where we can share some coping strategies from my end and some awesome inspiration and positivity from Nikki's end. And we just came together and we decided to just put together this webinar last minute, but we're here and we're thankful that you all are here. So that's where this came about, is just talking about the upcoming several days that are coming up, right? And hopefully y'all can use this in years to come. You'll get some great skills from this.
Yes, I think the things that they're going to learn from today will not only help them during the holidays, but help us, you know, as we try to continue to build those strong relationships with our family and with our friends. And so these strategies that you're going to learn today is not just for the holidays, guys. It's something that we can take with us wherever we go, in our workplaces, in our communities, in our church, wherever you are, because we're constantly trying to build better relationships, right?
Exactly. And like I always say, we're not given a handbook on life. We're not given a handbook when we're born on how to act and how to communicate. So that's why we're taking this opportunity to do this webinar and share some of those skills with you. And you're exactly right. Use them all the time.
Yes. So this is what we envision, right? When we think of a family, or when we think of the holidays, we want to come together with all smiles. And, you know, this is what we consider to be normal. Everybody wants to have what we call a normal family. But what is truly normal? How do we define normal? And I think what happens is, because we want this picture perfect life, this picture perfect get together or experiences, that sometimes when we have our expectations so high that we let ourselves, we get let down because we want to create this. And because we can't control what other people do, sometimes we can't create that. So there is no such thing as normal. It is what it is. And we go in and we kind of, you know, the only thing we can't control is ourselves. Laura, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
No, you're exactly right. And I see that a lot in my clients. You know, they always use the word normal. I want to feel normal. I want to be normal. But as Nikki mentioned so eloquently, is what is normal? You know, it's defined by everybody's perception and standards. So we need to kind of take the normal out of our vocabulary, everyday vocabulary, and just focus on being us in the moment, in the mindfulness of everything that we're doing. The other thing I wanted to share as well is this picture perfect painting that we see. This has been expounded times 100 with social media. And if you think about it, social media, yes, it's what people, they put out the best. They're not going to show you their family fights on social media, and they're not going to show you the dysfunction that happens in all of our families. So keep that in mind as you're scrolling through social media. This is picture perfect, and that's what you're going to see is picture perfect most of the time. So just keep that in your mindset as you're looking at that too.
I like that you said we're all dysfunctional. Because sometimes this is what happens in our families. We start to think it's, you know, that, oh my God, my family is a crazy family. My family, it doesn't look like this picture, so something must be wrong with us. But guys, every family has something crazy about it, okay? We're all dysfunctional in some way. And so when you see that and you understand that, then you're not so hard on yourself or your own relatives. You're not so hard on them. So what usually happens, guys, when we have these fights in our families, it can just throw everything off because we don't have that picture perfect family like we talked about. And so we start to think something is wrong with us. But it really is about how we interact and how we communicate with one another, so that we get through these moments. There will be some challenges. There will be conflict. And sometimes we think that life is perfect when it's absent of conflict, or it's absent of any of these things that we don't want in our lives. But it's these things that will help us grow into the family, into the people that we are, that God meant for us to be. You will hear me talk about God. I'm not trying to push my religion on anybody here today, but God has played a very important role in my life. So you'll hear me say that, but that doesn't mean that, you have to believe or you have to adopt the same beliefs that I do, or Laura, I think you do as well. But when we have these fights in our family, we start to feel like something's wrong with us. Do you feel that way, Laura, when something happens that is not you consider the norm, that you think, oh, something must be wrong with my family?
Of course, that's always, in the back of your mind when you're dealing with family members, because as we mentioned before, normal is not what everybody considers the same. So going back to this visual, when Nikki and I were putting the presentation together, I really liked this visual, because what people need to remember is that whether you have young children or adult children, sometimes they're caught in the middle. They're caught in the middle of this dysfunction. And just keep that in mind as you're dealing during the holidays, is that if you have children, bigger, small, young or adult, they're usually caught in the middle of all of these family dramas. So as parents, as the older adults, be more mindful of that as you're dealing and interacting with your family members, because they're watching you. Your children, no matter what age, are watching you and how you interact with others in your family. And that can cause future dysfunction and future concerns with mental health. So just keep that in mind as you're dealing with that. But this is a perfect visual that we chose for this, is that it's not always kids. A lot of times kids are the bystanders. They're the victims in this whole dysfunction. So just keep that in mind as well.
And they're also learning from the adults with how to deal with conflict. Talking to kids about conflict is going to happen regardless, right? It's just a normal part of life. But teaching them how to deal with it through our own interactions is so important. So be mindful that they're always watching us and how we interact and how we deal with one another. So Laura and I put together 5 strategies that you can use, not only like for the holidays, like we said before, but as you're interacting with family members or people in general. We put together 5 different strategies. And so the first strategy, and we tried to do this, Laura, your suggestion was, let's start with number 5. Tell us why you wanted to do that.
In the spirit of the old, I'm older, in the spirit of the old David Letterman show, but he goes backwards till we get to the most anticipated one at the bottom. So that's how we numbered them.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember, but I was like, okay, that sounds cool. Let's go with it.
Countdown. We're counting down 2023, so it's a countdown.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so Laura, I am so big on checking yourself first, okay? So often we go into places and we can judge and we can talk about what everybody else is doing, but it's so hard for us to look in the mirror and to say, you know what, let me check myself. I always say, check yourself before you wreck yourself. So where we always need to start with ourselves, checking our own attitude. And so before you even walk into, like, I'm getting ready for a family event coming up for Christmas. We're all going to get together, and we haven't been together in a long time. And so there are things I need to do to mentally prepare myself. There are things we want to encourage you to do to mentally prepare. So that means to do something relaxing before the gathering, whether that be spending time with yourself, whether that be meditation, taking a walk, just having some downtime, just to check in with your own attitudes, because sometimes we bring in our own attitudes, which can impact how we perceive what other people are saying or doing. So we have to understand that we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And I'm gonna say that one more time because that is so important. We see the world not as it is, but as we are. So sometimes if we walk into a place, Laura, and our energy is low and we're feeling negative, no matter what somebody says to you, they could say, hey, the sky is blue. And you'd be like, oh, you're trying to say that I think it's black? You know, it's like, anything, if you're in low level energy, could come across as being negative. So be sure to check yourself before you wreck yourself. Laura.
Yeah, check your attitude at the door. Go with an open mind. Put out positivity. You know, go in thinking this is going to go great. I'm going to have a great time with my family, with my friends. Manifest that before you even walk into the place. Just have that attitude and put it out there so that people can see and know that this is you. You know, you're a different person. It's a different year. We've been through a lot as a collective, and now is the time for us to show, you know, the work that we've done. So go in there with a positive attitude. The other thing that's so powerful is that when you walk into a room and you feel the energy, like Nikki said, be the energy, be the positive energy, be the thermostat and not the thermometer in the room. You set the temperature. Don't acclimate to the temperature that's already in there. So you be the change.
Exactly. Be aware, like I said, check in with yourself. It's so important to be aware. Protect your energy. Focus on what you can control and not trying to control everybody else. I always try to enter a room with a positive attitude, with some positive energy, and I usually get that energy back. If you go in low level energy and you're looking for low level energy, guess what? You're going to find it. In a minute, I'm going to share with you this acronym THINK before you say anything, because sometimes we could be the ones bringing in the negative energy, right? We don't want to speak things into people or speak things into the atmosphere that may be perceived as negative. I grew up in an environment in my hometown where anything goes, right? And it was like people could walk in, Laura, and say, girl, you sure have gotten fat, you know, or wow, you're not married yet? What's going on? And so it could bring down your energy if you don't fuel up and know who you are and be okay with where you are in your life right now. So be mindful of that. I'm going to share that in just a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and get through the slide, Laura, so we can get to your points too. Pause and don't respond rather than react, because sometimes when someone says something that stings, like you've gotten fat or you've gotten too thin or whatever that is, we tend to react to it. And Laura and I are going to talk later about how you respond to it. And then ask yourself, when someone says something rude, and we have people in our family that you want to stay away from them because they come across so negative. Ask yourself, what might that person be going through? Because sometimes we relate their actions to their character rather than their circumstances. And sometimes people are speaking because they're going through things. And when you know that somebody's going through something and they may say something that stings, you can be a little bit more forgiving because you say, you know what, I know that person's going through this right now. So you don't take it personally, and try not to take these things personally, because a lot of times when people say and do negative things, they're responding based on the way they feel and something on the inside. So they're telling us a lot about themselves. So that acronym THINK, this is what I want you guys to do before you speak. Think. And I saw this posted in a school, and I thought this was pretty cool, Laura, but I think it's not just for students, this can be for adults as well. Think before you say something, okay? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Snap a picture of that, guys. Snap a picture. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If it does not meet any of these criteria, then keep it to yourself. You know, everything that comes in your head does not need to exit your mouth. And that's the thing we need to remember. Some things pop in our head like, dang, she got fat, or dang, she looks different, or he looks different. That's not meant to be said. Is that nice? Is that inspiring? Then don't say it at all, right? So check your attitude at the door. So those are our things there for number 5. Number 4 is minimize contact. And Laura, I'm gonna get you in here on this one. So sometimes we walk into a place, we know those people who are we just need to stay away from them, right? We already know, and you know, some of us have 1 or 2 people, some of us have several people in our families that you just simply want to stay away from. You may, you know, start thinking about your family gathering and think about some of the characters there and some of the things that could possibly happen and that you may be fearful of. And you may say, you know what, this may not be good for me to attend at all right now with how I'm feeling at this time about myself. Laura, you want to say something about that one?
I just want to expound a little bit on the I statements. So whenever you're communicating, again, we're not given a handbook when we're born on how to communicate and the right things to say. I mean, we say by what we've learned and how we've been brought up. And a lot of times that's cultural. I mean, in the Latino community, anything goes, you just say it. And it's kind of endearing, but at the same time, it can be very harsh. So one of the things you need to think about is when you're talking about your feelings or you're trying to express your feelings is use the I statement, just like Nikki said. Say, I feel this way because of this, as opposed to you said this, so I feel this way. Because when you use the word you as opposed to I, when you're expressing feelings or thoughts, that's accusatory. And immediately that raises somebody's wall, somebody's guard, and that's where the conflict comes in. That's where the negativity comes in. So keep the walls down and use I statements. I feel this way because I heard you say this, and therefore I feel this. And yes, you know what? That takes a practice. That takes a lot of practice because our first attempt at speaking is, you said this, so now I feel this way. Very accusatory. So just stay away from the you statements.
I like that because when we talk, as soon as we say you, what happens? That person puts they're getting ready to fight when you say you. But when you say, I feel this way, when you say this or do this, it takes the sting off a little bit and they can actually hear what you're feeling rather than getting ready to defend themselves. So use I statements. We teach kids that in school, right? I use that now in my arguments with my husband because I've learned how to argue with him in a better way, or I'm learning to argue with him where he's not defensive. And I say, it makes me feel this way when you say or do this. Guys, you know, sometimes we sit at home, and I know I used to do this, especially when going into an environment where you know someone is going to say something that's going to sting. It's like you prepare for a comeback. It's like, okay, if they say this, then I'm going to say this. And you spend so much energy and time thinking about what you need to say to combat what somebody is going to say about you, that you get your anxiety up and you go in feeling like defensive. You're waiting for somebody, who am I going to box with today, who's going to say something about me? Guys, sometimes it's best just to disengage and walk away. Sometimes nonverbal language is more powerful than using actual words. So you don't have to use your actual words. You can let people know that they said something or did something that you didn't like by simply turning away, by shaking your head, leaving the room. But sometimes it's best to disengage so that you don't encourage or you don't give fuel to whatever it is that they're doing in that moment.
I have 2 little quick psychology tips for that.
Okay.
If someone insults you, take a pause for a second and look at them and say, are you okay? Because honestly, that'll stun somebody. What they're looking for is a reaction in you. They're looking to get back something that they want to interact. If somebody says something to you, they want to have that fight. They've already put on their gloves and they want you to respond to them. But if you stun them and you look at them and you just say, are you okay? That totally takes them off of their track. So try that. And the other thing is, if you're in an argument, keep your voice calm. It'll give the other person the impression that you're winning the argument. So calmness is key. Try those 2 psychological tips if that
Yeah.
happens to you over the break,
Yeah.
over the holidays.
Yeah, and you know, in these situations, you don't want to get into where it's a I win, you lose situation. You really want, and which Laura is going to talk about in a few moments, is set some boundaries. Because what we're not good at doing in our families is communicating. We usually, what we do is we communicate and we give feedback to the wrong people. So if I'm feeling a certain way, Laura, instead of me talking to the person that offended me, I'm going to tell you how that person offended me and what can you do about it. It doesn't change their behavior. It only it only encourages it because I haven't corrected the behavior. So a lot of times in our families, we don't even communicate with people what they're doing wrong or what they've done to hurt us. So we need to find the courage to start speaking our truth of when, you know, and you don't have to do that, like you said, Laura, in a negative way. You don't have to do it. You could definitely let them know, like with the I statements, I feel this way when you say this. And also it could be that you pull the person to the side because you don't want to engage and start this back and forth in front of everybody where you're sucking the energy out of the room. It could be, you know, could I see you for a second? Could I talk to you for a second over here? And let them know. And that's how you can set some boundaries, which I think we're going to get to in a few moments. So Laura, take us away with the exit plan.
Number 3, have an exit plan. It's okay to show up to an event and leave. There's no rules. Show up to the event. If you want to go, you've been invited, show up. If you walk in and you feel the toxicity, again, like we said before, walk in with a positive attitude. If you walk in with a positive attitude and throughout the course of that time that you're there, you constantly feel the negativity, people are arguing, it's just not a good place for you mentally. Your headspace isn't well at that point. It's okay for you to leave. There is no set rules. There is no rule in life that says that you have to stay for hours and hours and hours. Go, show up, say hello to everybody, make an appearance. If you don't feel comfortable, it's okay to leave. Again, communication is key. Communication is everything. If you have no communication, you're not going to get anywhere. So keep that in mind. The other thing is, as Nikki was mentioning, is share and communicate. People are not mind readers. You have to keep that in mind. They don't know what's going on in your head and what you're thinking. So communication is key. So if we could go to the next slide so I can share the communication tip that I had. Okay, so this is actually an acronym. It's called Dear Man. This is one of my favorite dialectical behavior therapy strategies. It's a DBT strategy. So Dear Man, all it stands for is describe. So describe the current situation, state the facts, be factual. Again, don't allow emotions to get into the conversation because once they do, that's it. The walls come up, the emotions come up, and nobody listens to what you're saying. So describe, but be factual when you're describing. Express your feelings and opinions about the situation, but you're going to do it mindfully, and you're going to do it with the I statements and not the you statements. Assert yourself by asking for what you want and saying no clearly. Again, that'll go towards boundaries. Reinforce or reward the person ahead of time, so to speak, by explaining positive effects of getting what you want. Again, people are not mind readers, so keep that in mind. The M in Dear Man is mindful. Keep your focus on your goals. Stay focused, be mindful. Appear confident. Again, that all goes in your body language. Keep your voice calm, don't raise your voice, but be and appear confident in what you're asking for. That's going to go a lot longer of a way than if you start acting on your emotions and start getting very emotional when you're speaking. And last is negotiate. Be willing to give to get. Again, don't be so rigid that you're like, no, it's my way or the highway. People have different perspectives. So be able to be flexible and give to get what you want. We can go back to the other slide.
Okay. If you want to screenshot some of these slides, go ahead and do that. I think this is a good one to screenshot and keep with you, just like the think model that I showed earlier. Go ahead and do a screenshot of that if you need to.
So going back to our number 3, have an exit plan. Plan ahead. So just if you're thinking, you may be uncomfortable with an abrupt exit, it's okay to have an excuse. So when you show up, you know that you're not going to be there very long because certain family members, certain friends are going to be there. Just have an exit plan. So plan ahead. It's okay to say, for example, I have to leave early because I have another event to attend. I have to leave early because whatever your reason is. You can even say, I have to leave early because I have to go home and feed my cat or my dog or walk my dog. Those are very valid excuses. Now, keep in mind, if people know you don't have a pet.
Right, I was gonna say, we don't have a dog.
Like, you don't like animals. No. So just, make sure it's valid. It's okay to set that up when you arrive. Let them know that I'm here and I appreciate your invite, but I'm not going to stay long because I have such and such going on. We know that there's lots of other events taking place. So that's a valid excuse. You have to go to somebody else's house. You had already made prior arrangements to meet at somebody else's home. So just communicate. Communication is key, but you plan ahead with what you're gonna have your escape plan as. The last thing, and this is one of my favorites, is when you get there, you know what? Chances are you may change. You may enjoy the time that you're there. You may find somebody that you connect with and you start having this awesome conversation with a family member. It's okay to ditch your exit plan. You had an exit plan going in, but you're having a great time, which is hopefully the case for everybody. You're having a great time. You're talking with people. You're connecting with your family members. And things actually turned out way better than what you expected. It's okay to stay longer and ditch your exit plan. Nikki, is there anything you want to add here?
I just love the communication piece. I think that, going back to that initial slide, Laura, where we had the kid in the middle of the fighting parents, we don't know how to communicate. And even when we think that people should automatically understand when they hurt us. So we know that all of us have these triggers. And I wanted you to talk about, Laura, a trigger versus trauma. What is the difference? Kermit has his hand up. Kermit, did you want to chime in before Laura answers that question?
Yes, I just had a question as far as the exit plan. What do you do how do you have an exit plan when it's actually in your own home?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good exit plan. So just a thought. You're asking that. That's a good one. So again, plan ahead. If you're hosting, you can't possibly say, you know what, I'm going to leave to go walk my dog because you're at your home, right? So that's a very valid thought and a very valid question. If you're hosting, have an end time. Set your time like for an hour or 2 hours. Have enough time for people to get there, talk to each other, enjoy some food, enjoy some adult beverages if you're an adult, but just, have that time, have it planned out. First of all, planning is key. So plan ahead, have activities planned, but have an end time. Also, if that end time, make it flexible, say, you know what, we got to go at this time. I know we're hosting, but we have another event. You can always have an exit plan. So a start date a start time, end time is perfect. Have activities planned, know when you're going to serve your food, know when you're going to do a game. I know Nikki's going to talk about games towards the end. So have all that planned out, kind of like have an agenda, like we would do that anytime. So just have that set out and be flexible. It's okay to ditch your exit plan. So if you have it set from 1 to 3, but y'all are enjoying yourselves, you're having a great time, you're playing games, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm just going to skip the other event. And that way you have that flexibility. But the key is communication, planning, and flexibility.
I love it. And also, that's a good question, Kermit. I think when you plan an event, you're the one that's setting the tone. You're the one that's setting the energy. And so the biggest thing, Laura, I think you said was the agenda. When you have things planned, it's kind of like in a classroom. If there is no agenda or schedule of what comes next, you're going to get a lot of chaos. You're going to get whatever they bring. But when you start to set the agenda as, hey, arrive on this time, at this time, we're going to do this, and you have some set things planned, some activities planned, it's less likely that negativity will seep in. And plus, if you're the one planning the event, you're also the one that's putting out the invitations. So people that you want to have over. And if you have a family member that you know is can be toxic at times, you need to have a conversation with that person before they even enter. You know, if you know that, this is the thing about families that I've seen, you know, even in my own family, we don't have the courage to have conversations. And that's why we keep getting the same behaviors over and over and over again, because we're not courageous enough to set boundaries and have crucial conversations with family members. But have those conversations before if they choose to come. And if not, they can't come. If they're going to be disruptive and come in, you know, we all have those relatives that like to drink. You talked about adult beverages, Laura. Some of us consume too many adult beverages, and we come in and we want to spit our toxicity all over everywhere. That's not welcome. And we need to let that be known. And we're the ones, if I'm hosting an event, then I am the one setting the energy for the event. So Kermit, does that answer your question? If you're hosting?
Love it, love it. Great,
Okay.
great responses.
Okay, number 2, one of my other favorites is setting boundaries. As Nikki said, it takes courage. Communication takes courage. Setting boundaries take courage. So we want to help you out on, give you some tips on how to be able to do that. So boundaries should be based on your values or things that are important to you. So, but you have to know those beforehand. You have to know who you are, and you have to like start now. The best time to start was yesterday, but since you haven't done it, start now. What do you value? What are things that are important to you? You know, make a list, because that's where you're going to start setting your boundaries. Your boundaries are yours and yours alone. So keep that in mind, is that many of your boundaries, they might align with those who are close to you, but others, it'll be unique to them. It may not be, it'll be foreign to them. It won't be something that they're used to. So your boundaries are yours and yours alone. Not everybody's going to see the same thing that you see, but that's where communication comes in. Know your boundaries before entering a situation. This will make it less likely that you'll do something you're not comfortable with. Again, as Nikki mentioned, you know, even having adult beverages, if you're hosting, you can keep control of that adult beverage situation. Don't have so many. You know, don't have a free-flowing open bar where liquor's falling from the ceilings. You don't want to do that, you know. Just keep it at a minimum. You set the agenda, you set the pace, and you set the standards. So keep that in mind. So you ask what to do. When you're setting boundaries, always use confident body language. Face the other person, make eye contact, and use a steady voice at an appropriate level. Again, not too quiet and no yelling. Okay, so definitely something to do. Set your body language is everything, right? Be respectful. Don't yell. Don't use put downs, and don't give the silent treatment. You know, we have those family members that, you know, they've caused us some concerns, some issues throughout the year, and we see them. Don't ignore them, guys. Acknowledge them. We're adults. And even if you're not an adult, you're setting that tone for your child. If you see somebody, acknowledge them, say hello. They are not invisible. So please do that. Treat them right. You treat others as you want to be treated. It's okay to be firm, but your message will be better received if you are respectful when you're putting out that message. Set the tone, exactly, Kermit. Plan ahead. Think about what you want to say and how you'll say it before entering a difficult discussion. And just like Nikki mentioned, you have to have those crucial conversations, those difficult conversations that take courage with those that are closest to you sometimes, just so you can set the tone. Have it in a private spot so that they're not embarrassed. This can help you feel more confident about your position as well. And then the last thing to do is compromise. When appropriate, listen and consider the needs of other people. You never have to compromise, but give and take is part of any healthy relationship. That's the thing about marriage and any type of relationship, close relationship that you have. You have to be able to give and take. They go hand in hand. You can't just take and expect somebody else to receive that well. So keep that in mind as you're setting your boundaries. Nikki, did you want to chime in on the boundaries?
I think the boundaries and communication go hand in hand, because we automatically assume, even with people in our own families, they don't know your triggers. They don't know what you mentioned, Laura, they don't know your values. You have to clarify and be clear and communicate on what those are. So when you think of boundaries, I think about going into, your backyard, if you have neighbors and there's a fence there, right? That's a boundary. That is clear. We know their side of the yard versus our side of the yard. When you walk into a get together or gathering, or you're in a relationship with someone, they're learning where that fence is for you. So in order for you to know your boundaries, you need to be self-aware. So like you said, kind of thinking about, what are my values? What are those things that I will accept and those things that I will not accept? And then you need to have the courage to communicate that to the other person. So when you're setting your boundaries, be clear and think about that fence that separates your house from your neighbor's house. When you set boundaries, think about how you can communicate those boundaries. For instance, you could say, if someone says, hey, are you sure you need a second piece of cake? You can say, please don't ask me that again. Or, in the future, I'll just, say what's going to happen. For example, in the future, I will walk away if you make a comment like that again. You can be, you don't have to be rude, but you can let that person know that wasn't a polite thing to say. And like I said, if you think you're going to come across as rude, maybe it's important that you pull the person to the side and use your I statement, because people do, I think that people do genuinely want to get along with others, but we don't know what rocks your boat, okay? We don't know what ticks you off. Even if that is a sister, even if that is a mother, brother, we're still learning one another. And so be sure to state the things that, just make you feel a certain way, and let that person know, so that they don't cross over that fence, that boundary that you've set for yourself.
And Nikki, I just love how you mentioned the fence in the backyard. Like, how where the boundaries are, and that's would be called, and I always tell my clients this, that's a hard boundary. It doesn't move. So one of the last tips on here was compromise, give and take. So what I always say is, when you have boundaries, or you establish boundaries, especially with those people that we love and care about, which is our family and our friends, the people closest to us, have more of a flexible boundary. And I always liken it to like those big trampolines that are in the backyards, and they have the netting around them. That's the kind of boundary you should set when you're dealing with the people that you love the most. They have to be flexible. The boundaries are there to protect you and protect them, but they're also there not to hurt them. So if they fall into the netting catches them and bounces them back, right? But there's a boundary there, but it's flexible. So keep that in mind. You should never have a boundary that's as rigid as the Great Wall of China, or even your backyard fence. Those are excellent visuals of it. But when you're dealing with family and friends and people that you love the most, have those flexible boundaries. Allow them, give them some grace if they overstep their boundary, but at the same time, help them bounce back in if you feel that they're too far into that boundary as well.
That's really good.
We have a raised hand, Nikki.
Okay, that's Kermit.
It's me again. Hey, so I have a question. One of the things, especially growing up in our family, the word being respectful is, if you even try to set a boundary, it may come across as being disrespectful depending on who you're talking to. So how do you navigate with talking to people thinking that respect is really you not saying anything to them?
Wow, that's something to think about, huh? And that goes back to different generations. I mean, it's not only cultural, but it's also a generational mindset. And again, that's the netting on the trampoline. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to give and take. If you know that you're dealing with somebody older, like our parents or our grandparents, they were raised in a different generation than we were. I'm a Gen Xer. I have raised Gen Zers. They're totally different, and they have totally different mindsets than I do. So again, the only person you can control is you. You're welcome to have that communication. Communication is key. You've put it out there. what I have learned is that when you communicate and people see it as disrespect because of the age or the generation difference, what they do is they take what you say, they may feel it's disrespectful and they may say something about it, but they always take it back and process it later. They may never come back and tell you, hey, what you said made sense to me, because that's not the way that they were brought up. They were brought up to apologize, but they'll take it, it'll stay in their mind, and they will process it. And they may or may not change how they feel about it, but that's not up to us to decide. The only people we can control is us, is me. I can only control Laura, nobody else. So that's a great question. But you communicate, you put it out there, however it's received, as long as it's done in a respectful manner that you feel is a respectful manner, and you've communicated that, then that's really all we can do, and hope that they process what we've said to them.
That's really good. I think going back to the beginning when we talked about being self-aware and being aware is understanding that someone's actions is not always related to character, right? It could be related to circumstance. And so a circumstance could be that it's an older person, and older people have a way of saying things like your grandma may say, girl, look at your butt, you need to put that cake down. You're not going to take that personally, right? You're not going to, that's grandma, and grandma talks like that. And so some things we can just write it off as, you know what, that's my grandma and she loves me. The other thing is, before a person has the right to an opinion about you, they have to have built, that relationship. And usually a grandmother or someone older who has that relationship with you, you give them credit there so that they can make those withdrawals because they've given you so much more, right? It's kind of like they say, give 3 compliments before you give what do you call it, Laura? It's like give 3
positives before you give a negative.
Give 3 positive before you give a negative. These people, some of these people that we're talking about, they fed into you. They've given you life. They have just helped you become the person that you are today, and they've given you a lot of positives. So if they say that one thing that could come across as a sting, or they could be playful, or it just doesn't sound as positive, you can give grandma that one comment. So we're not looking for every comment where we're going to go and ready to fight. So think about that as well, because people aren't there. A lot of people aren't there to hurt you. People really genuinely want to have fun. And sometimes these playful comments can come across as hurtful depending on where you are. Because remember, you see the world not as it is, but as you are. So be aware of where you are. And last but not least, look for the good. A lot of times we go into places and we're already contemplating who is going to say what, and we're looking for the negative. And when you look for the negative, you're going to find it. But also when you look for the good, guys, it's there as well. So focus on the good and it will grow. I read something the other day. It says, water the flowers and not the weeds. So when you walk into a room and you're with other people, look for the good in the people, and you're going to find that. Look for the good, and that's going to grow. And if you want good, model good. Some of us walk into a room and we already have a poor attitude. We come in with negative energy, but we expect everybody to be positive with us. But if you want positivity, if you want to have a good time, model the behavior you want to see. Have fun, bring games. And we talked about that, Laura. We're going to share a couple of games with you. Bring some games and just have a good time. Bring some fun energy. And I promise you, you're going to get that back if you bring some energy. Have that agenda plan where you have some activities planned where people can enjoy each other, and just don't have people sitting there bored looking at one another so they can judge the way people are looking, judge what they're doing, or comparing. Have some games, because games keep us in the present moment. So as much as we can be in the present moment, the better. Laura, I'm gonna go ahead and share my one game with the group, and then if you have one, one of the games that I want to bring to the group this holiday season is Be the Miracle. Sometimes we go out and we're looking for the miracles, and they say Christmas is the season of miracles, but why don't you be someone else's miracle? You know, I found that these little hand hug slips that I like to give out sometimes, I love to give these out to even strangers. I was in the hospital a couple of days ago, I think, well, earlier this week. And all of my nurses and doctors that came in, I gave them a hand hug slip. And it was amazing the way they responded to just a slip of paper. And it could have been something like, thank you so much for caring for me. Thank you so much for being kind. Thank you so much for your service. And when you do that, it just shares, I mean, who's going to be negative to someone who's giving something positive? So this holiday season, find ways to be the miracle instead of waiting for a miracle to happen to you. Be the miracle. So this is a fun game that you can turn into positive gossip, okay? So instead of talking about people in a negative way, have people sit around and write positive messages to one another. So it's not really a game, but it's a great activity to do and a way to bring some positive energy into the room.
So I'll share my game, and it's nowhere near as cool as the hand hug. And a plug in there, make sure you get Nikki's book, The Hand Hug. This is where this came from. It's awesome. Totally not on the same wavelength, but it's super easy, and a lot of us have it. Uno. I brought my little Uno deck. I love this because it's quick and easy. You stick it in a purse, in a bag, you pull it out, and you're instantly known as a person who brought a game to the party. You brought your own game. Uno's a fun game. Some of the other things we like to do is in the Latin or Hispanic culture, we play loteria, which is same thing as bingo, but it has the Spanish pictures of the different people on there. So loteria is fun. And something really low maintenance is Pictionary. If you have some white paper, just some paper laying around and a marker, you can do that, or a whiteboard. So just something quick that you can pull out as an impromptu game if you haven't planned it out. But just do something fun. I mean, just have a great time while you're enjoying your time with your family.
Okay, my sister said that the chat is disabled, and I really wanted to have people ask questions because we had just a few minutes left. So I asked her in the chat here, what was her question? Because I would like to hear a general question from the public that's listening. So if you have a question, if you have Laura's text, phone number, text her the question. If you have a question for me, you can text me the question, but I hate that the chat is not disabled so that they could ask questions, because that would be great. We're going to make this webinar, and then someone said they had to jump off. Okay, she says she didn't have a question, but they had to jump off. We're going to make this available. We are recording this session, so we're going to make this available to everybody. But we hope we've given some good information here that you can really take with you. But one thing I want you to be mindful of is communication is key. No one knows how you feel unless you communicate. And don't be offended when someone communicates how they feel, because at least they're giving you information. So we need to learn to communicate in our families in order to make them more whole. We want to wish everyone here a happy holiday season. We hope you have a good time with your families. And remember just to bring